At Auschwitz Birkenau, where countless atrocities were committed, one man's crimes stand out for their sadistic nature. Dr. Josef Mengele used the prisoners at the camp as subjects for twisted experiments in pursuit of racial purity, eugenics, and his own deviant desires. He had a particular obsession with twins, especially children, and is known as the Angel of Death. Mengele was born on March 16, 1911, and grew up in a family business that made farming equipment. He faced several illnesses during his childhood, and struggled with his studies. However, this only made him more determined to succeed. As a university student of philosophy, he became engrossed in the racial ideology of Alfred Rosenberg, who believed that the German and Nordic races were superior and entitled to rule Europe. Jews and other races were to be dominated. Mengele was drawn to the idea of social Darwinism, which held that weaker races should die so that stronger ones could thrive. But it was his study of physical anthropology that truly captured his attention. He earned a PhD in the subject in 1934, with a paper attempting to prove the superiority of the German race by measuring the lower jaws of various races. Mengele's path to joining the Nazi Party began in 1931 when he joined Der Stahlhelm, a Free Corps paramilitary group. The group believed in re-establishing the German monarchy and opposed the harsh restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles. When the group merged with the Nazi Sturmabteilung, he became a member of the Nazi Party. After earning his PhD, Mengele joined the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene, where he worked under Dr. Verschuer. Verschuer studied the genetic and environmental differences between twins, a subject that fascinated Mengele and one he would carry with him to Auschwitz. At the outbreak of World War II, Mengele was rejected from service in the German army due to his poor health. However, he joined the Waffen-SS, the military arm of the Nazi Party, as a medical officer. He served on the front lines in Ukraine and was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class and First Class for his bravery. In 1942, he was badly injured and returned to his role in the SS Race and Resettlement Office. This office was responsible for arranging marriages for SS members and investigating the racial purity of the wife's family. They also investigated instances where Germans had sex with those deemed to be of lesser races and arranged for kidnapped children to undergo Germanification, where they would be evaluated and indoctrinated into the Nazi way of life. Mengele's role during this time was to administer tests to ascertain racial purity. In 1943, his old mentor, Dr. Verschuer, encouraged him to apply for service at the concentration camps. Mengele was successful and was posted to Auschwitz Birkenau as chief physician in the Romani camp at Birkenau. Here, he was able to apply his racial ideologies and desire to understand racial differences to the lesser races the Nazis were systematically exterminating. One of Mengele's preferred duties, and one he carried out even when he was not assigned to do so, was overseeing selections. New groups of prisoners would arrive by freight train, and it would be decided whether the prisoners would be able to work. Those who were deemed able to work were sent to be worked until death, while those deemed to have no use were sent straight to the gas chambers. This included the elderly, pregnant women, and children. In one instance, a woman attacked a guard attempting to separate her from her daughter, and Mengele shot both mother and daughter, sending the rest of the prisoners straight to the gas chambers. Mengele enjoyed first pick of the subjects for his experiments, and was always on the lookout for twins, especially children. He was able to obtain an estimated 500 pairs of twins, but only around 100 of them survived. Mengele's goals in experimenting on twins were twofold. First, he wanted to prove that genetics were a bigger factor than environmental factors in how a person develops, providing evidence of the Nazi belief in racial superiority. Second, he wanted to understand how to create more twins and thus increase Aryan reproduction rates. Mengele kept his children in separate barracks from the rest of the camp population, even executing any camp prisoner caught talking to the children. He was impeccably dressed in his white coat and polished black boots during selections, signaling left or right with the swish of his hand to decide whether prisoners went to work or to the gas chambers. Witnesses to Mengel's selection process, such as Mata Wise, noted his callous disregard for human life. Dr. Josef Mengele, a Nazi doctor at Auschwitz Birkenau, gained the trust of his young victims by grooming them. He would spend time with them, give them sweets, and talk to them about their day, even going by the name Uncle Mengele. This ultimately gained their trust, which he would exploit in the most horrific ways imaginable. All the while, the children would be tested and measured, prepared for his perverse experiments to come. The sorts of experiments were varied. Blood would be transfused from one twin to the other, limbs would be removed to test endurance, and conjoined twins would be forcibly created by sewing two twins together, stitching together the blood vessels before leaving the children to die of gangrene. Many of these experiments provided little viable information. Many were done simply for the perverse pleasure of the twisted doctor. A survivor of Mengele's experiments on twin children was Eva Mozes. She arrived at Auschwitz Birkenau in the spring of 1944. Like many who arrived, her family was immediately divided up. Her elder sisters, Edith and Liza, only 14 and 12 years old, were never seen again, sent to the gas chambers as they were too young to be of any use. Eva and her twin, Myram, were pulled away from their mother by guards who realized they were twins. The last Eva ever saw of her mother was her outstretched arm as she was also sent to the gas chamber, unable to even say a final goodbye. Eva and her sister were set aside with a group of twins as the rest of the prisoners were sorted. It was there she was first noticed by Dr. Mengele, impeccably dressed as ever. The group of children were sent to a building for processing, where their heads were shaved, they were given new clothes marking them as medical experiment subjects, and they were tattooed. Eva was given the number A7603. Later that night, Eva and Myron befriended two Hungarian twins who explained the nature of the death camps, and that the only reason they were alive was that they were twins to be experimented on by Dr. Mengele, whom they would meet in person soon. Eva was injected with some kind of biological weapon and soon contracted an awful fever. She attempted to hide the fact that she was ill, as Eva was aware that if she was sent to the hospital, it was likely that she would not come back. If a twin was to succumb to whatever disease was inflicted upon them, the other twin would be murdered, and a comparative post-mortem would be carried out. Eva was determined that this would not be their fate and held on for as long as she could. Eventually, the illness took hold, and she was sent to the dreaded hospital. Once there, Mengele and a group of Nazi doctors examined her. Mengele coldly commented, "She is so young. Too bad she will be dead in 2 weeks." Eva was given no food, water, or medication. She had to drag herself to a tap in the barracks to survive. Over the course of 3 weeks, Eva managed to manipulate the thermometer to gradually show her temperature was normal. She was reunited with her sister and able to recuperate in the squalid conditions of the barracks. One bizarre fascination Mengele had was with the condition heterochromia, where an individual's eyes are a different color. This again was likely born of the Nazi preference for blue eyes as a sign of racial purity. Mengele collected the eyes of various slaughtered prisoners, each eye a slightly different color. In addition, Mengele experimented on living prisoners. He injected adrenaline or dye directly into the eyes in hopes of changing the eye color. Another series of experiments Mengele would carry out was into the reproductive organs. This would be as crude as you can imagine. It would involve injections directly into the woman's uterus, the goal being to sterilize the victim. Other times it would be with various instruments and cuts that a woman would be rendered infertile. Men and boys would be castrated, perfecting and understanding the most efficient ways to enact mass sterilization on undesirable populations. It is important to note that samples of Mengele's victims, such as eyes, limbs, and all manner of human organs, were sent to Germany to researchers and doctors, such as his previous mentor. There was a direct relationship between the doctors at the death camps and the more conventional, respectable researchers. These respectable doctors were able to exploit and reap the benefits of the doctors at the camps who, like Mengele, were eager to establish themselves as reputable doctors, willing to go to any extreme to reach this goal. What is shocking is that Dr. Verschoyle was never tried for his research nor for his role in the Nazi racial theory practices that relied upon the work of the death camp doctors. It is true that many Nazi doctors, including Mengele's mentor Dr. Ottmar von Verschuer, were not held accountable for their crimes after the war. Some were able to continue their medical careers, while others went into hiding or were able to flee justice altogether. This was partly due to the fact that many of these doctors were able to hide behind the guise of medical research, and some argued that they were simply following orders. Dr. Josef Mengele's sadistic crimes at Auschwitz Birkenau, particularly his brutal experiments on twins and children, epitomized the depths of human depravity. His pursuit of racial purity and his complete disregard for human life resulted in unimaginable suffering for countless victims. Despite his heinous actions, Mengele managed to evade justice and lived a relatively peaceful life. It is vital that we remember and honor the victims, listen to their stories, and confront the horrors of the Holocaust, ensuring that such atrocities are never forgotten and that we continue to strive for a world free from such cruelty.